Every year, across the globe, countless individuals adorn streets with vibrant flowers, construct intricate altars, and participate in solemn processions to commemorate Corpus Christi. Yet, the true significance of this widespread observance remains largely unknown to many. What exactly is Corpus Christi? What is the underlying meaning of this celebrated day? While some might perceive this feast as a mere tradition, its origins lie far deeper. Corpus Christi emerged from a profound crisis of faith, a doubt so pervasive that only divine intervention could resolve it. And God's response wasn't verbal but visceral, through blood. This blood marked a miracle of such magnitude that it irrevocably altered the course of church history. Over 7 centuries ago, a priest named Peter journeyed along a cobblestone road toward Rome. He had departed from his parish and his life in Prague, driven by a persistent doubt that tormented his nights and consumed his thoughts. For years, Peter had officiated countless masses, elevating the host and reciting the sacred words, "This is my body." However, within him, a gnawing uncertainty took root. What if it was all merely symbolic? What if Christ was not truly present? This was an era where the church held immense authority. Temples overflowed with devout worshippers, and relics were venerated with fervent devotion. Yet for many, faith was practiced more out of habit than genuine understanding or heartfelt connection. Peter yearned for an undeniable answer, something beyond theological arguments or doctrinal explanations. He sought a tangible sign, something real he could perceive through touch and feeling. Consequently, he undertook what was considered unthinkable. He abandoned his town and his parish and embarked on a pilgrimage to Rome, seeking solace and renewed faith at the tomb of Saint Peter. But midway through his journey, he paused to rest in a quaint town seemingly untouched by time, yet steeped in mystery, Bolsena. This town bore a name etched with both suffering and divine intervention, for it was the land of Saint Christina. Christina's story began in her childhood, when she made the resolute decision to follow Christ. However, her father, a powerful pagan ruler of the city, viewed her faith as a personal affront and vehemently demanded she renounce Christ. Her steadfast refusal ignited a horrific ordeal of torture, beatings, imprisonment, and being cast into fire. Yet nothing could break her spirit. Though her body endured immense pain, her soul remained unwavering. Finally, in desperation, her father made a fateful decision. He ordered her bound to a massive stone and cast into the depths of Lake Bolsena, a seemingly certain death. But then the impossible occurred. Instead of sinking, the stone began to float, defying gravity as if held aloft by divine intervention. Christina, still bound, remained miraculously suspended on the water, alive. Witnesses on the shore cried out in astonishment, recognizing the event as a manifestation of otherworldly power. God was present. When the stone was brought back to land, an even more profound sign was revealed. Christina's footprints were imprinted upon the rock, not as a mere trace, but as a permanent seal, tangible proof that faith endures even when plunged into the abyss of despair. Peter, upon hearing this extraordinary story, felt a stirring within his soul. For the first time in a long time, he witnessed a faith that defied the odds, that floated when all logic dictated it should sink. While it didn't completely resolve his inner turmoil, it provided the impetus for him to take another step forward on his journey. That very night, Peter resolved to celebrate Mass in the city of Bolsena, a Mass that would forever be etched in his memory. The following morning, he awoke early. The lake's mist still clung to the streets, creating a thick, ethereal veil. Saint Christina's story had deeply affected him, yet his doubt lingered. His faith remained fragile, and despite his prayers, he felt a profound emptiness and silence. Nevertheless, the priest determined to proceed with the Mass. He entered the small church with hesitant steps, unsure if he was truly prepared, but an inner voice urged him, "Do it, just do it." And Peter obeyed, his hands trembling slightly. He prepared the altar, laid out the corporal, the sacred linen, placed the chalice, took the host, and began the prayers. The pivotal moment of consecration arrived. He gently lifted the host, and with lips still uncertain, he uttered the words he had recited countless times. Hoc est enim corpus meum. This is my body. And then the extraordinary unfolded. Suddenly, the host began to bleed. First, a single drop appeared, followed by a thin, dark stream of real blood flowing from the bread. Peter was overcome with astonishment and paralysis. His hands became stained with the precious blood. The corporal turned crimson. The blood dripped onto the altar stones, leaving indelible marks that seemed to sear the miraculous event into the very fabric of the stone. The worshippers who witnessed this extraordinary occurrence fell to their knees, speechless with awe and reverence. Nobody moved, their eyes fixated on the miraculous sight. Peter was unable to speak, but in that instant, his doubt vanished. Before him, the wound of the lamb was visibly bleeding in his own hands. He couldn't complete the Mass. He carefully placed the bloodied host upon the corporal, and trembling, made his way toward the sacristy, each step leaving a trail of blood drops behind, like a visible manifestation of the invisible. That night, sleep eluded Peter. At dawn, he carefully wrapped the blood-stained corporal and departed Bolsena for Orvieto, where Pope Urban IV was residing. He walked for days, his heart filled with a newfound conviction. He carried no prepared sermon or eloquent speech, but he bore a cloth imbued with a miracle, a truth that could not be denied. When he finally stood before Pope Urban IV, Peter knelt, reverently presented the blood-stained corporal, and recounted the miraculous event that had transpired. The Pope listened intently to every word the priest uttered, carefully examined the blood-soaked linen, and suddenly a memory surfaced, leaving him astounded. An image vividly returned to the Pope's mind, and he understood that this miracle was no mere coincidence. Years prior, a nun had prophesied such an event, but only he had heeded her words. He himself had heard her vision when he was still a priest, long before his elevation to the papacy. This premonition had occurred over 600 kilometers away, in the tranquil confines of a convent in Liege, Belgium, where a young nun named Juliana had a vision that would profoundly impact her life. At the tender age of 16, a peculiar image appeared before her. A white disc, radiant and flawless, save for a single dark blemish on one side. Juliana was perplexed and troubled by this vision. She prayed and waited in silent contemplation. Days, weeks, and years passed, yet the image recurred repeatedly, always the same, a luminous circle marred by an imperfection. Finally, in the solitude of her devotion and penance, she grasped its meaning. The image represented the Church. The pristine white disc symbolized faith, devotion, the very body of Christ in the Eucharist. And the dark spots signified an absence, a void, the lack of a dedicated feast to celebrate with joy. And solemnity Christianity as most sacred mystery, the real presence of Christ in the consecrated bread and wine. While Holy Thursday existed, it was often observed with a somber tone. Jesus desired something different, a luminous celebration, a commemoration not of death, but of the enduring presence of the bread of heaven among humanity. Juliana knew she had to share this revelation. But who would believe her? For 2 decades, she kept the vision a secret. When she finally dared to confide in someone, only one person took her seriously, a priest named Jacques Pantaleon. He held no significant influence, merely a man who, upon hearing Juliana's vision, believed without reservation. But time passed, and Juliana died in relative obscurity, her vision seemingly forgotten, her message unheard. Then the unexpected happened. The humble priest who had believed what everyone else had dismissed was elected pope, taking the name Urban IV. And when Father Peter of Prague stood before him, the blood-stained corporal held in his hands the memory of Juliana's vision flooded back with profound clarity. The white disc, the stain, it was a direct message from God, confirming with tangible blood what a young nun had foreseen decades earlier in her quiet cell. The Pope acted swiftly, immediately summoning the most learned and devout theologians of his time and dispatching them to Bolsena to investigate the miracle firsthand as witnesses. They meticulously examined the corporal, scrutinized the altar stones, interviewed the faithful who had witnessed the miraculous Mass, and one by one, they affirmed what could no longer be denied. The miracle was authentic. The Church promptly designated a theological term for this extraordinary event: Transubstantiation, a profound mystery wherein bread ceases to be merely bread and wine ceases to be merely wine, transforming into the actual body and blood of Christ, not symbolically, but in a real, living, and eternal manner. Upon their return to Orvieto, news of the miracle had spread throughout the town, and throngs of people began to follow the theologians. Men, women, the elderly, and children all yearned to witness and believe. Suddenly, a spontaneous procession formed. Learning of the approaching relics, the Pope made an unexpected gesture. He went out to meet the miracle. Urban IV descended from his ceremonial carriage and walked humbly to the bridge that marked the city's boundary, separating it from the rest of the valley. There, before thousands of onlookers, he knelt, not before a majestic throne or a royal crown, but before a simple piece of linen soaked in blood. The people followed his example. Hymns of praise filled the air, and the body of Christ was carried in procession through the streets of Orvieto. This marked the birth of the first Eucharistic procession. Since that day, whenever the Blessed Sacrament is carried in a monstrance through the streets of the world, it is not merely a tradition. It serves as a powerful reminder of that pivotal day when the blood of the Lamb flowed onto the stones of an altar, moved a pope to profound recognition, and restored to the Church the unwavering certainty of Christ's enduring presence. He is here, and he continues to walk alongside us. However, even after the procession concluded and the days turned into weeks, the Pope felt a lingering sense of awe and responsibility. The blood-soaked linen had deeply moved the crowds, but he understood that this extraordinary event couldn't remain solely as a memory. Urban IV knew that preserving relics and recounting the miracle's story were insufficient. He needed to ensure the miracle's enduring impact through time. Consequently, the Pope decided to institute a new feast to commemorate it. But simply designating a date on the calendar wouldn't suffice, because a true feast originates not from a decree, but from adoration. Therefore, without delay, Urban IV gathered the most distinguished theologians, poets, and scholars of his era, and entrusted them with a special task: to compose hymns. Hymns that would speak of the body of Christ, that would sing of the glory of the Blessed Sacrament, and that would stir souls with profound reverence, akin to those who had witnessed the blood and touched the miracle. Thus began the creation of a hymn that would forever be etched in history. Many poets contributed, but among them, one figure stood out: Saint Thomas Aquinas. The day arrived to present their compositions to the Pope, and one by one, they began to read their verses aloud. But when it was Thomas's turn, everything shifted. He rose slowly, holding a parchment in his hands, and began to recite, Panis Angelicus fit panis hominum, dat Panis Angelicus figuras terminum, o res mirabilis manjicit dominum pauper, servus et humilis. Angelic bread becomes the bread of men. The bread of heaven ends all figures. O wonderful reality! The poor, the slave, and the humble eat the Lord. Each phrase was a profound revelation, for Thomas wrote not to impress, but as one who had truly encountered the Lamb. What Christ accomplished then is renewed even now, and the mystery of his sacrifice transforms into grace. When he finished, the room was filled not with applause, but with a profound silence. One by one, the other theologians lowered their heads and, without uttering a word, tore up their own manuscripts. They recognized that no other writing could match the sublime beauty and depth of that hymn. It was truly poetry from heaven. From that day forward, the Panis Angelicus became the official hymn of the feast of Corpus Christi. And even today, 8 centuries later, it continues to be sung with devotion. Yet, Pope Urban IV recognized a practical challenge. The bloodstained corporal couldn't simply be stored away in a chest. It was a living testament to the miracle. So, he commissioned the construction of something worthy of this extraordinary event: a cathedral, the Duomo of Orvieto. In the year 1290, architects, sculptors, painters, and laborers began work on what would become not just a temple, but a monumental reliquary. The facade was adorned with shimmering gold mosaics and intricate sculptures that narrated the sacred story. Inside, every vault, every column, every ray of light was meticulously designed with a single purpose: to house the corporal of Bolsena. The blood that flowed from the host now had a majestic throne. And to this day, the blood-stained corporal remains, preserved as one of the most venerated Eucharistic relics in the world. But the story didn't conclude in Orvieto. News of the miracle transcended borders, and with it, the feast of Corpus Christi began to spread. First throughout Italy, then to France, Germany, and Spain. Streets came alive with processions. The Blessed Sacrament was carried in resplendent monstrances, and people emerged from their homes to offer their worship. For centuries, Corpus Christi wasn't merely a single day. It was an entire octave, 8 days of celebration, processions, music, and adoration. This extended observance reflected the people as understanding that such a profound mystery couldn't be contained within a single day of commemoration. The Eucharist, once viewed by many as merely symbolic, now ignited in the hearts of the faithful as a vibrant, living presence. And it was named Corpus Christi, which in Latin signifies the body of Christ, a literal declaration of what this feast celebrates: the living, glorious, and sacrificed body of the Son of God. The profound impact of this mystery was so enduring that centuries later, at the Council of Trent, the Church solemnly declared that Christ is truly present in body, blood, soul, and divinity in every consecrated host. From that moment onward, the real presence of Christ in the consecrated bread ceased to be just a teaching in the Catechism and became the visible center of the Church's worship. It was no longer simply doctrine, but an unwavering certainty. However, not everyone embraced this truth. As the feast of Corpus Christi spread across Europe, dissenting voices began to question its foundation. Entire denominations began to distance themselves. And even today, some churches have excluded it from their liturgical calendar, arguing that the Eucharist cannot truly be Christ, that it is only a symbol. But Jesus himself spoke with clarity, with absolute certainty. "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever." And when his disciples expressed doubt, he didn't soften his message. He didn't explain it away with metaphors. He made it even more direct. "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." You too might not fully comprehend it all, and it might seem shrouded in mystery. But there's something crucial to understand. The Eucharist is not a mere symbol. It is a person. It is Jesus, whole, alive, and present. He himself declared, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in them." In every Eucharist, the same miracle is renewed through time because the blood of Christ still cries out and still saves. It is a covenant, a sacred pact sealed with love. And as Jesus said at the Last Supper, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." I am sharing this with you now because I want to encourage you to share this video with other believers so that we can spread the understanding of what we truly celebrate on Corpus Christi, the real and living presence of Christ among us. And if you observe this holy day, please share in the comments below how you celebrate it and in which city you reside. In some countries, solemn processions gracefully traverse streets adorned with fragrant flowers, while in others, the celebration is a vibrant expression of music and color, transforming entire neighborhoods into open-air temples of worship. How do you celebrate Corpus Christi? Share your traditions in the comment section. And let us always remember the powerful words spoken by Christ himself in the silence at the Last Supper, shortly before his betrayal. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood